Remember what I told you. Words spoken ahead of time, with tenderness yet urgency, like someone who loves deeply enough to warn you before the pain arrives, like a shepherd who sees the wolf approaching and calls out to his sheep with a trembling yet firm voice. Jesus spoke about Satan, not to draw attention to him, but to protect us from being caught off guard. And still, in this 21st century, with churches on every corner and sermons flooding our screens, his warning has been forgotten. Forgotten in the heart, forgotten in practice, forgotten in crowded services, where so few discern that there is an active, intelligent, strategic adversary who knows the shortcuts to the human heart. Jesus was clear. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth. John 8:44. He wasn't speaking in metaphors. He was revealing the very essence of the enemy, a being who doesn't begin by attacking your body, but by destroying truth, twisting what's right, poisoning doctrine, making holiness look outdated and turning conviction into confusion. Satan is, above all, a murderer of truth, because when truth is lost, everything else begins to fall apart. That's why the silence in the church is so dangerous. We don't deny Satan with our words, we just erase him from our preaching. We stop naming him. We replace spiritual warfare with soft, comforting messages about inner struggles. And without knowing, we send God's people into battle, dressed for celebration. The world got faster, louder, more connected. And Satan didn't complain, he just adapted. He no longer needs to convince you God isn't real. He just needs you too distracted to seek him. He doesn't have to destroy your faith. He only needs to let it grow lukewarm. Some say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. But David Wilkerson went further. If you live in sin and think you're going to heaven, you've been deceived by a demonic gospel. And that's no longer a matter of opinion. It's a matter of salvation. Many live a symbolic faith, emotional, shallow, where hell is just a metaphor, and Satan is nothing more than an outdated idea. But Jesus never treated the enemy as a symbol. He called him real, a devourer, a deceiver, a fallen being who still whispers lies, and until his time ends, he will keep leading many astray. This isn't a scare tactic. This is an embrace that shakes you awake, a voice that says, there's still time, because what's at stake is eternal. Jesus warned us because he loves us, deeply, personally, eternally. We live in an age of excess, too many voices, too many screens, too many things demanding our attention, and somewhere in the noise, the soul begins to suffocate, not with screams, but with silence. There's a kind of fall that makes no sound, but steals everything. Satan knows that. He's learned that he doesn't need to knock you down. He only needs you to forget. Forget who you are. Forget why you're here. Forget that this life is short. Forget that eternity is real. He doesn't have to destroy you. He just needs to distract you. And distraction is a soft poison. Jesus warned us, be careful or your hearts will be weighed down with the anxieties of life. Luke 21:34. The real danger isn't always in visible sin, but in invisible exhaustion, in deadlines, bills, notifications, a life too full but empty of presence. A distracted heart loses its watch. Prayer becomes a chore. Scripture gathers dust. Heaven fades into memory. And a tired mind becomes the enemy's favorite playground. Technology only accelerated the drift. With a tap, we can see the whole world, but we can't see our own souls. We're connected to everyone, yet disconnected from the Spirit. Satan hides behind what looks neutral. He enters through entertainment, through busyness, through the lie that tomorrow will be enough. He lulls you gently, like a predator waiting for the moment you stop paying attention. And while you run around trying to do it all, He waits, because distraction isn't just about losing focus, it's about losing direction. And when direction is lost, truth slips away. The devil doesn't want you to fall off a cliff. He prefers you get lost in a busy, empty routine. He wants you everywhere, except in God's presence, listening to every voice, except the Spirit's. Distraction may feel harmless, but it's not. It steals sacred time. It dulls the mind. It numbs the soul. You don't have to deny God to be defeated. You just have to forget there's a war. And there is one. It's invisible, constant, fierce. And in that war, those who don't stay awake fall asleep, and those who sleep never see the enemy walk in. There's a silence in the church that wounds more than it heals. A silence that leaves people unprepared. Today, we preach about love, hope, restoration. We talk about purpose, healing, and grace. But we've stopped talking about the adversary. We've removed his name from our sermons. We've traded spiritual warfare for emotionally safe theology. And in that absence, darkness finds room to grow. The church, which should be the most spiritually alert place on earth, has grown emotionally sensitive, but spiritually numb. Paul didn't hesitate to name the conflict. He said, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness." Ephesians 6:12. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing reality, a structure of invisible resistance. And when we forget the enemy, we start fighting the wrong battles. We blame people. We react to life. We drown in circumstances. And the real war goes unnoticed. We walk unarmed. We live reactive. We grow tired. And we lose spiritual clarity. Today's church has softened its stance. War is now metaphor. Resistance is emotional. Victory is declared with words, but rarely lived in the Spirit. And yet, the enemy thrives in this silence. He moves where he is ignored. He works where he is dismissed. Families that don't pray, leaders who don't watch, believers who no longer believe they need to fight. And in this spiritual passivity, he finds open doors. When the church stops talking about Satan, it forgets how to resist him. It stops reminding people that there's armor to wear, that there's a fight to fight, and instead of raising soldiers, it raises spectators, comfortable, well-meaning, unaware. And by the time they realize there's a war, they've already been wounded. The battle is not symbolic, it's real. It doesn't wait for your permission. It continues, even in your silence. This isn't about fear, it's about vigilance. Because if the church no longer teaches warfare, the enemy no longer needs to hide. Jesus once said, "Watch and pray." Matthew 26:41. Not as a suggestion, but as a survival command. Over time, those words became slogans, worn on shirts, quoted in songs, but emptied of urgency, stripped of weight. People spiritualized them until they no longer obeyed them. But Jesus wasn't being poetic. He was being protective. Watchfulness wasn't about looking out at the world. It was about looking inward, about sensing when the soul grows cold, when prayer becomes shallow, when scripture becomes background noise, when sin stops hurting, when the conscience begins to compromise, when holiness turns optional. Jesus knew the danger wasn't just in temptation, but in slow, spiritual sleep. Many think watching means spotting danger in others. But Jesus meant something deeper, a spiritual alertness, an inner awareness, a soul that refuses to fall asleep. There's a difference between hearing about darkness and standing against it, between quoting verses and carrying the cross. Watching is not an emotion, it's a discipline, a choice, a daily awakening to the truth. The enemy doesn't rest, and neither can our spirit. When Jesus said, "Watch," he wasn't asking for feelings. He was calling for readiness, not just sensitivity, but posture. Because spiritual war doesn't always feel dramatic. Often it feels normal. But beneath the ordinary lies something eternal. Watching means refusing to fall asleep, even when everyone else is dreaming. There's something deeper than visible sin, more subtle than moral failure, more hidden than the flaws people can see. It's the ancient desire of an enemy who never accepted being denied the glory he wanted. From the very beginning, Satan didn't just want to disobey, he wanted to be worshipped. He wanted the throne. He wanted God's place. And that desire hasn't changed. He still wants the most sacred part of you, your devotion, your affection, your reverence, your daily rhythm. In the wilderness, Satan didn't tempt Jesus with something scandalous. He asked for worship. All this I will give you if you bow down and worship me. Matthew 4-9. That is the heart of spiritual warfare. It's not just about resisting sin, it's about guarding your heart's throne. Because the one who owns your worship directs your life. Satan doesn't need you to become an atheist. He just needs you to bow to the system, to give your loyalty to comfort, to surrender your choices, your time, your desires, to anything but God. Isaiah 14 reveals Lucifer's ambition. I will ascend to the heavens. I will make myself like the Most High. He didn't just want freedom, he wanted the position, and that hunger still drives him. Today, we see a refined kind of idolatry, where self is exalted, careers are worshipped, and success is labeled as blessing, a lifestyle admired more than holiness. It looks normal, it feels harmless, but beneath the surface there are spiritual agreements being made with the world. You don't need to speak them, you just need to bow. Modern idolatry is polished, culturally acceptable, dressed in goals and dreams, but it's still idolatry. And wherever there's misplaced worship, there's spiritual dominion. Satan doesn't just want you to trip, he wants your reverence. He wants to sit at the center of your routine, shape your priorities, steer your desires. He's not after just your behavior, he's after your loyalty. That's why this fight isn't only about sin. It's about worship. It's about misplaced passion, silent compromises, habits that reveal where your heart truly rests. Because wherever your treasure is, your soul follows, and the enemy knows that. He works tirelessly to earn your surrender, even if you never notice, even if you think everything's fine, even if you call it normal, while heaven calls it betrayal. Jesus once said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Luke 10:18. Not a story, a testimony, a glimpse into what happens when rebellion meets divine justice. He saw the enemy cast out, defeated before time. But today, many still treat him like an ally, not knowingly, not directly, but practically, in decisions, in desires, in daily routines. And the danger isn't in believing he doesn't exist. It's in living like he's irrelevant. Hell didn't start after death. It began with the fall, with pride, with rebellion. And every time we play with deception, pride, or spiritual compromise, we echo that same fall. Different language, same spirit. The devil doesn't need to appear with horns. He moves in subtle choices, in unfiltered influences, in emotional alliances we defend with logic. He disguises as light, but he is deception. Jesus reminded us, the enemy has already fallen. Victory has been written. But until that final day, the war continues. And in this war, neutrality is an illusion. If you don't resist, you yield. If you don't choose, you've been chosen. If you don't discern, you're already exposed, because Satan is real, and if you don't treat him as an enemy, you've already made room for him as a friend. He who has ears, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Revelation 2:7. This isn't just a message about Satan, it's about space, about occupation, about discernment, about how the enemy finds a place in our lives, not through force, but through distraction. through silence, through a lack of vigilance. He doesn't need loud worship. He just needs your inattention, your numb routine. And slowly, what once was faith becomes tradition. What once was fire turns into form. What once was battle becomes boredom. Knowing the devil exists isn't enough. Recognizing him isn't enough. You must resist. You must guard the gate. You must fight with holiness. This battle for your soul is real, and ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. On the contrary, what you ignore gains space. What you tolerate grows. What you over-spiritualize becomes harmless. But Jesus never called the devil harmless. He called him a murderer, a liar, a thief. So reflect. What in your life is being led by darkness, even if it looks like light? There are decisions that feel right, but are rooted in pride. Habits that seem normal, but nourish the world within you. Feelings that sound pure, but are distractions in disguise. Deception rarely shows up wearing a mask. It arrives as logic, as comfort, as shortcut. And when we finally notice, we've already drifted. Leonard Ravenhill once said, "The devil doesn't mind if you go to church as long as you don't meet God there." And those words ring truer than ever. Never have we had more access to sermons and less awareness of the presence. Never has it been easier to speak about God and harder to truly find Him. But the end of the story has already been written. Revelation doesn't end with Satan victorious. It ends with him cast into the lake of fire, but those who followed him, even unknowingly, will go with him. The real question isn't whether Satan exists. The real question is, who's leading your life? Who's shaping your days? Who has claimed your heart? The Spirit of truth or the Father of lies?